we have seen that the government could, in principle, nationalize a resource or give the exclusive right to some monopolists to administer it. Are there other less drastic ways to administer properly the open access resource? In other words, how should a government regulate the fishing, or what should the government do? So we can look at what the industry looks like. So can we have some insight into what is open to the possibilities for government? First option that looks very obvious is just to distribute quotas. So just say that there's a quota that tells fishermen you cannot fish more than B star O. Obviously, the difficulty there is to make sure that the fishermen respect the quota as well, and that these quotas are distributed fairly and paid properly. It's not always the case, but it's a viable option. So let's just go ahead and write this. So one would be distribute quotas. And then, so that's one. Can we think of some other policy that would solve the problem, that would have an equivalent impact on the market? Think about what you learn in microeconomics. Yes or no, maybe if you didn't think about it. So a tax. So imagine that I wanted to tax every boat. So what would be the appropriate tax to reach the optimal solution? So you have two ways of doing it. So one is with your eyes, and the other is by computation. So we're going to do both of them. So think about it. Okay, so well, again, what we want is to achieve B star O. And the question is, if I wanted to impose some tax on every boat that is rented, so what should this tax be? Well, since everything is linear here, so it looks very obvious that I should tax such that the cost of renting a boat is not C, but C plus the tax. So here. And if that were the case, then the fishermen would naturally rent boats until they reach this number of boats, B star O. And what is this tax? Well, it's just at the center of P alpha K and C. So it's essentially P alpha K minus C divided by 2. So that's the way to do it graphically, if you want. Now let's just do it properly. So let's do it in a way that makes sense. So one way to think about it is we want to start with the optimal fishing, with the open access fishing, add some tax, and get the optimal fishing. So let's look at what would happen if we consider quotas, for instance. All right, so now I have to not show that, but to impose a tax on boats. So imagine that we are looking at stocks. So what we want is to have the open access stock with a tax equal to the stock with optimal fishing. So what does that look like? Well, let's write this as S star F, but with tax, so T. And we want this S star F with tax to be equal to S star O. So what was S star F? It was C divided by P alpha. But now we impose a tax on both. So we could impose other taxes, and that's some exercise you can try. So if you impose a ad valorem tax or a tax on, I don't know, sales tax on fishes, for instance, you could get something similar. So imagine it's a tax on renting boats, so plus this tax, which has to be equal to the socially optimal stock of fish. So here it is K plus C divided by P alpha, which was divided by 2. And then all we have to do is isolate T. So let's multiply by P alpha here on both sides. Then let's subtract C. And let's simplify further. So P alpha we can multiply this, P alpha, and then P alpha multiplies C divided by P alpha is just C. And then I have C over 2 minus C, so I get minus C here. So that was what we found graphically. If you remember, it was P alpha K minus C divided by 2. So we confirmed that it made sense. So that would be another way to do it. Now there are some cases in which even with the best efforts, governments don't succeed in managing well open access resources. We have seen actually that fishing may be one of them. So why is it so difficult? Well, because oceans are big and fishes go everywhere, so they don't know that in some country they might be more protected than others. And even if one country tries to enforce international treaties in its oceans, then it's not that easy to prevent other boats from other countries to illegally fish in their water. And it's very expensive to regulate illegal fishing. And also, especially for larger species of fish, then since they take a longer time to reproduce, then it means that you basically have to wait many years to let the species regenerate itself, so that maybe in 10 or 30 years, or the next generation of fishermen would enjoy a better harvest of fish. But in the short term, it's really you have to be patient. So for all of these reasons, then in many cases, actually the people are not successful. So we could write here the de facto solution. So what can happen? Well, two things. One possibility is, well, we just lose the resource and that's it. But in some instances, then it's possible that if is sufficient market value for some good, then private markets are able to take over previously publicly supplied resources. So what we can see is change nature of the good. From non-excludable to excludable. So non-excludable, common open access resource, to excludable, it's mine. Why is it mine? Because I'm the one who generates it. So in the case of fishes, it is fisheries. And we're going to see later that yes, fisheries become more and more used. So then what we would see is public access resources change to private property. And this is especially true for large-scale programs or large-scale system, such as international fisheries. So it's not a very optimistic way of dealing with it, but it de facto is something that happens quite often, as we'll see in the next video.